My name is Michael, I'm 38, and until a few months ago, I thought my life was boring in the safest possible way. I lived in Dallas, Texas, in a cookie-cutter neighborhood where all the houses looked nearly identical, with a front lawn that demanded to be mowed before the summer sun baked it brown. My wife, Laura, and I had been married for 9 years. We weren't rich, we weren't glamorous, but we had what I thought was stability. I worked at an insurance office. The pay wasn't great, but it covered the mortgage, the groceries, the reliable but aging SUV we drove everywhere. Our home was a modest 3-bedroom with beige walls and the kind of carpet you couldn't quite get clean no matter how many times you vacuumed. On weeknights, I'd come home, kick off my shoes, crack open a cold beer, and collapse on the couch. Dinner was usually takeout unless I was feeling brave enough to throw together my famous boxed lasagna. Laura worked at a nonprofit. She was passionate, chatty, always coming home full of stories about projects and people I never met. Sometimes I'd half listen while scrolling ESPN, but she never seemed to mind. Our marriage wasn't fiery or thrilling, but it was ours. And for a long time, I thought that was enough. But Laura had a best friend, Megan. They'd met in college and stayed close ever since. Megan was everything Laura wasn't: flashy, wealthy, carefree. She had married Brian, a tech millionaire, and together they lived in a sprawling glass mansion on the edge of town. Whenever Megan called, Laura's face lit up in a way I couldn't ignore. She idolized her. Megan's world was rooftop brunches, charity galas, designer handbags, while ours was coupon cutting and Netflix marathons. I used to laugh it off, tell myself it was harmless. But deep down, I always worried about the pull Megan had on her. That worry became real the night Laura came home with a smile stretched too wide across her face. She slammed the door shut, heels clattering on the tile, her energy buzzing like static. "Michael, you won't believe this," she squealed, tossing her purse onto the couch. Those words always spelled trouble. She grabbed my hands and practically bounced in place. Megan invited me on a girls' trip to the Bahamas. A whole week. A private resort, spa treatments, champagne, the works. I forced a laugh. "Let me guess, we'll need to remortgage the house so you can sip mojitos on the beach?" But then she dropped the real bomb. "It's all covered. Megan's paying for everything. Flights, food, spa days. I don't have to spend a dime." Her eyes shimmered with excitement, but mine narrowed with suspicion. In my world, nothing that good came without a cost. For the next few days, every sentence out of her mouth started with, "In the Bahamas, she bought new swimsuits, new dresses, even a brand new suitcase big enough to fit a small refrigerator." Our bedroom looked like a department store had exploded, heels lined up across the floor, bikinis draped over chairs, jewelry boxes left open on the dresser. At night, she'd twirl in front of the mirror in some sundress, her eyes glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. And for a moment, I wanted to be happy for her. She worked hard, maybe she did deserve a break. But every time I tried to push down the doubt gnawing at me, my gut whispered, "This trip isn't going to end the way you think." The morning she left, Laura was humming as she double-checked her luggage. I lugged 2 oversized suitcases to the curb, sweating under the weight. She kissed me too quickly, said, "I'll call every night," and then climbed into the waiting Uber. I waved as the car disappeared down the street, not knowing that I wasn't just watching my wife leave for vacation. I was watching my marriage drive away. The first night alone felt almost liberating. No reminders from Laura to pick up my socks, no debates over what to watch on Netflix. I sprawled across the couch in my boxers, ate pizza straight from the box, and washed it down with cheap beer. For a few hours, it felt like being 20 again: loud TV, dirty dishes, no rules. But the silence crept in faster than I expected. Without her voice filling the house, the room sounded hollow. Even the hum of the fridge felt too loud. I left the TV running just to drown it out. By 9 o'clock, I found myself glancing at her side of the bed, half expecting to hear her laugh echoing down the hallway. Instead, there was nothing but stillness. That's when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. A FaceTime call from paradise. When I answered, Laura's face filled the display, glowing in the golden sunset. Behind her, turquoise waves crashed against white sand. Palm trees swayed as if they'd been staged for a travel commercial. She twirled the camera around to show me the infinity pool, the marble walkways, waiters in crisp uniforms. "Can you believe this place?" she gushed, hair falling in perfect waves. Megan went all out. "It's like a dream." I lifted my half-empty beer to the screen. "Looks rough. Meanwhile, I'm surviving on pizza and reruns." She laughed, but it sounded too bright, too rehearsed. In the background, I heard women's laughter, clinking glasses, music drifting from the bar. Then, for just a second, I caught movement, someone tall, broad-shouldered, passing behind her. "Who's that?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the figure, then she angled the camera away too quickly. "Just one of the staff," she said, smiling tightly. The moment she hung up, my chest tightened. The image replayed in my mind, not a waiter carrying towels, but a man, confident, moving like he belonged there. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, the suspicion lodged itself in my gut like a splinter. The next evening, another call came. This time she was indoors, sitting on a plush white bed with curtains swaying behind her. The lighting was soft, her hair a little messy, her smile tight as if practiced. "How's paradise?" I asked, forcing a grin. "It's amazing," she said too quickly, her eyes darting off screen. "We've just been so busy with spa treatments, girl time, you know. I try to keep it light. Not too busy to forget about me, right?" Her laugh was short, nervous. She shifted the phone, changing the subject. And then I heard it, male laughter, low, close, unmistakable. My pulse kicked. "Laura, who's there?" She froze for a second, then said, "It's just the TV. Relax." But the way her voice cracked on the last word told me otherwise. By the third night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying her every glance, every word. And when the screen lit up again, I already knew something was wrong. She was outside by the pool, string lights glowing above the water, music thumping faintly in the distance. She angled the camera toward her drink, a tall glass with fruit skewered on top, like she was desperate to prove how much fun she was having. And then I saw him. A flash of a familiar profile in the background. Broad shoulders. Confident stride. A voice I knew all too well. Wait, was that Brian? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her smile froze. Her head shook too quickly. "No, you're imagining things. Just some other guest." But I knew that jawline. I'd shaken his hand at barbecues, clinked beers with him, stood in his $1 million backyard. That was Brian, Megan's husband. "Laura," I said firmly, leaning closer to the screen, my voice low. "Don't play games with me." "Was that Brian?" She forced a laugh, brittle as glass. "Michael, you're paranoid. Do you really think everything's some conspiracy? It's crowded here. Not everyone you see is Brian." Her voice rose, sharp and defensive. She angled the phone away, muttered something I couldn't catch, and then the call cut off. I sat in the dim glow of the TV, phone still in my hand, staring at the black screen. Part of me wanted to believe her. To think I was just a jealous husband imagining things. That would have been easier. But deep down, I knew the truth: when a man feels a crack in his marriage, he doesn't imagine it. He senses it. And my gut was screaming that the crack had already split wide open. The days dragged on like prison sentences. I circled her return date on the calendar and stared at it each morning as if I could will the numbers to move faster. Every night I told myself I was overthinking, that when Laura came home everything would slide back into its predictable rhythm: takeout dinners, Netflix marathons, the steady comfort of routine. But my gut refused to let go of what I'd seen. Brian's face in the background haunted me like a ghost. Laura kept posting photos on social media, perfectly filtered shots of infinity pools, champagne glasses clinking in the sunlight, sandy beaches that looked like postcards. I'd scroll through them while sitting in our dated Dallas living room, surrounded by brown carpet from the 90s and a couch with a permanent dent where I always sat. It was like watching two separate worlds, hers drenched in luxury and light, mine quiet and ordinary. I grilled burgers alone in the backyard, the Texas heat pressing down while she floated in turquoise water thousands of miles away. Each cocktail she sipped, each sunset she watched without me, pulled her further into a life I could never give her. And I couldn't shake the question, did she even want to come back at all? The night before her flight, I decided to make her return special. Maybe I could remind her what mattered. Maybe she'd walk through the door and see the life we had was worth saving. I stopped at the grocery store after work and picked out a bouquet of roses. They weren't perfect, some petals already curling at the edges, but I hoped she wouldn't notice. I bought tall white candles to make our cheap dining table look almost romantic. And then I made dinner. My signature boxed lasagna bubbled in the oven, filling the house with garlic and melted cheese. For the first time in a week, the house felt alive again. I set the table, lit the candles, dimmed the lights. I told myself this night would fix everything. At the airport, I clutched the roses, rehearsing the smile I wanted her to see first. Travelers streamed past, dragging suitcases, reuniting with families. And then I spotted her. Laura. Tan. Glowing. But not at me. Her eyes slid past like I was a stranger holding flowers. She gave me a quick hug, polite, distant. "Thanks for coming," she muttered, already pulling out her phone. The ride home was suffocating. I tried small talk. "So, how was it?" Pictures looked incredible. "Fine," she said flatly, her gaze fixed on her glowing screen. Every few seconds, her thumbs tapped furiously, and she tilted the phone away from me like a teenager hiding texts. Her face lit up, not at my words, but at whatever message flashed across her screen. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't driving my wife home. I was chauffeuring a stranger who couldn't wait to get back to her conversation. When we walked into the house, the candles had melted halfway down. The lasagna sat cooling on the table, the roses drooping in their vase. I pulled out her chair, waiting for a smile, a spark, anything. She barely touched the food, claimed she wasn't hungry, and disappeared upstairs with her suitcase. I sat alone at the table, staring at the candles burning down to nothing. And it hit me with the kind of clarity that makes your stomach twist. Laura had come home. But my wife hadn't. That night, I slid into bed beside her, praying for the familiar ritual, her head resting on my chest, the quiet comfort of her breathing. Instead, she turned her back. No kiss goodnight. No whispered, "Love you." Just the glow of her phone one last time before she set it on the nightstand and pulled the covers tight around her. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the silence screaming louder than words. Inches away, she felt farther than ever before. And deep down, I knew, the Bahamas hadn't just given her a tan. They had taken something from us I wasn't sure I could ever get back. The first week after Laura's return was brutal. I kept telling myself it was just jet lag, that she'd come around once the exhaustion wore off. But the silence in our house grew thicker by the day, like fog you couldn't see through or breathe in. We ate dinner at the same table, but it felt like we were separated by miles. I'd ask simple questions, "How was work?" Or, "Want to watch something tonight?" And she'd respond with one-word answers. "Fine." "No." "Tired." Her phone was always there, glowing between us, face down but never far from her hand. Even the small rituals that once stitched our life together were gone. No quick kisses when leaving for work. No texts during lunch. No shared laughter about our oddball neighbors. The little threads of connection had frayed until there was nothing left to hold on to. I told myself I'd prefer a fight, anything would be better than this dead silence. Anger meant passion, meant there was still something worth saving. But the cold distance? It was worse than hatred. It was indifference. By the end of the first month, I no longer felt like I was living with my wife. I felt like I was renting space with a stranger. We shared a roof, a fridge, even a bed, but nothing else. She came home later and later, blaming work or errands. She'd eat standing at the counter, scrolling her phone, then vanish upstairs early, always turning her back to me before I could say a word. I tried to fight for us. Suggested date nights. Offered to cook. Made dumb jokes like I used to. But each effort bounced off her like pebbles against glass. The worst part wasn't her coldness, it was how easily she seemed to accept it. Like she didn't even notice our marriage was rotting away beneath her. And then there was the phone. That glowing screen became my enemy. She never let it out of her sight. It was in her hand while she cooked, face down on the table at dinner, tucked under her pillow at night like a secret lover. Every buzz made her eyes light up in a way I hadn't seen when she looked at me in months. I noticed patterns, the way she tilted the screen away when I walked into the room, the sudden smile she tried to hide behind a sip of coffee, the long bathroom breaks where all I could hear was the muffled tapping of her thumbs. I told myself not to become that guy, the paranoid husband snooping through texts. But the glow of that phone in our dark bedroom was like a spotlight, exposing the truth I couldn't yet prove. It wasn't just a phone anymore. It was evidence. Proof that someone else had taken my place. The cracks widened until they couldn't be ignored. One evening, we were sitting at the table with takeout containers between us when her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so quickly she nearly knocked over her drink. "Who is it this time?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "Work," she said without looking up. "Work doesn't text you at 10 at night," I shot back. "And it sure as hell doesn't make you smile like that." Her fork clattered onto the plate. "You're paranoid, Michael. Not everything is some grand conspiracy. Maybe if you trusted me." "Trusted you?" I cut her off, heat rising in my chest. "How can I when you treat your phone like it's classified?" She pushed her chair back so fast it scraped across the floor. "I don't need this," she snapped, storming upstairs. A door slammed. And I was left sitting alone with cold food and an even colder truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the curve of her shoulder turned firmly away from me, while every vibration of her phone gnawed at my sanity. Was she lying next to me and texting him? Was Brian on the other side of that glowing screen, laughing, talking, stealing what used to be mine? The silence pressed down until my chest ached. I got up, paced the hallway, drank water I didn't need, sat in the dark living room listening to the hum of the air conditioner. But no matter where I went, the questions followed. Who was she smiling for? Who had replaced me? By morning, I knew one thing for certain: something had to give. Because I couldn't keep living in a house where the truth was locked inside her phone and the woman beside me was already gone. The breaking point came one evening over takeout, the kind of ordinary night that should have been forgettable. Boxes of Chinese food sat between us, the clink of chopsticks the only sound in the room. Laura barely looked up from her phone, scrolling, smiling at something unseen. Her phone buzzed again, and she grabbed it so fast her drink nearly toppled. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who is it this time?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. "Work," she said without hesitation, her eyes glued to the screen. "Work doesn't make you laugh like that," I shot back, my chopsticks snapping in half between my fingers. Her eyes flashed. "God, Michael, do you hear yourself? You're paranoid." I leaned forward, my pulse hammering. "Then prove me wrong. Let me see your phone." The air in the room froze. Laura's smile vanished, her fingers clutching the phone so tight her knuckles went white. "No," she said sharply. "No?" I repeated, the word burning on my tongue. "If it's just work, what's the big deal?" She shoved her chair back, the legs screeching against the tile. "I don't have to prove anything to you. You don't own me." "Own you?" I barked, standing now too. "I'm your husband, Laura. And I know when I'm being lied to." Her chest rose and fell, anger and fear flickering in her eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about." But I did. I could feel it in every nerve of my body. The truth wasn't hiding anymore, it was screaming at me. The rest of the night unraveled fast. She locked herself in the bedroom, leaving me pacing the hallway, fists clenching and unclenching. I sat on the couch with my head in my hands, drowning in a storm of doubt and certainty. By morning, the house felt like a battlefield. I came downstairs to find her at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Her eyes were red and puffy, the kind you don't get from a bad night's sleep but from crying. She didn't even notice me at first. "Rough night?" I asked softly, leaning in the doorway. She blinked, wiped quickly at her face, and forced a weak smile. "Just tired." But her voice cracked on the last word, and my stomach dropped. She wasn't cold today. She was breaking. I sat across from her, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The silence between us felt heavy, suffocating. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. "Michael, we need to talk. Those words are poison to any marriage." My chest tightened, my throat dry. "All right," I managed. "Talk." Her fingers trembled around the mug, tracing its rim like she needed something to hold on to. Her lips quivered, her eyes wet. I braced myself for whatever storm was about to hit. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. The hum of the fridge. The ticking clock. Even the sunlight pouring through the blinds, it all vanished into nothing. Only those two words remained, echoing in my skull. Pregnant. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, for her to laugh, to tell me it was some cruel joke. But her tears spilled, her lips pressed together like she was bracing for impact. My voice cracked as I whispered, "How? How is that even possible? We hadn't been close in weeks. Months, really." The timing hit me like a train. "Is it mine?" I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. She dropped her gaze to the coffee mug, silent. And in that silence, the truth took shape like a blade pressed against my throat. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes met mine, full of guilt, full of fear. Her lips trembled as the words broke free. "It's not yours." The chair beneath me felt like it had vanished, the ground tilting under my feet. My breath came shallow, ragged. My hands gripped the table until my knuckles turned white, as if holding on could keep me from falling apart. "Then whose is it?" I forced out, my voice shaking. Her body crumpled, sobs shaking her shoulders. She buried her face in her hands, but I couldn't let her hide. "Whose, Laura?" I demanded, leaning forward, my heart pounding like a war drum. Her lips parted, the words so faint I almost didn't catch them. "It's Brian's." The name detonated inside me, louder than a gunshot. Brian. My friend. My neighbor. The man I'd clinked beers with in his $1 million backyard. The husband of her so-called best friend. I sat frozen, the air thick and suffocating. Rage. Humiliation. Heartbreak. All colliding at once until I didn't know which one would consume me first. And across the table, my wife sobbed into her hands, the truth now laid bare between us like a corpse. Her confession hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. "It's Brian's." Those two words replayed in my head until they didn't even sound like words anymore, just noise that shook me from the inside. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, smash her phone against the wall, anything to bleed off the fire burning through my chest. Instead, I sat there frozen, my hands trembling against the wood, the breath tearing in and out of me too fast. "Brian," I whispered, tasting the name like poison. "Megan's husband. Your best friend's husband. How long, Laura? How long have you been?" She shook her head quickly, her face crumpling. "No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't ongoing. It was just, it happened once." I laughed, sharp and hollow. "Once? That makes it better? You slept with my friend, the father of your best friend's kids, and you want me to feel better because it was only once?" Her sobs broke again. "Michael, please. I didn't plan it. I swear I didn't. It just happened." "Then tell me," I snapped, leaning forward, my voice like a whip. "No more lies. No more excuses. When did it start? How did it happen? Every detail, Laura, or I swear I'll never believe a word you say again." She buried her face in her hands, but I slammed my palm against the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. She flinched, lowering her hands, her eyes bloodshot and wet. "Fine," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You want the truth? I'll give it to you." She took a shuddering breath, twisting her fingers together like she could wring the guilt out of them. "Megan had to leave early. Her mom was hospitalized. She caught the first flight back." My stomach dropped. "And Brian?" "He stayed," she admitted, her voice barely audible. He said Megan insisted. That everything was already paid for. And suddenly it wasn't a girl's trip anymore. It was me and him. I felt my jaw clench so tight it hurt. Go on. Her eyes filled again, her words tumbling out in broken pieces. At first, it was innocent. Dinners, drinks by the pool, talking too long. I told myself it was harmless. But what? I demanded, though my chest already burned with the answer. Her silence was worse than any confession. She broke only when my glare forced her to. It was the third night, she whispered, her voice cracking. We had too much champagne at dinner. Then rum at the bar. I told myself it was just celebrating. But, we ended up back in his room. The air rushed out of me like I'd been punched. I was drunk, she said quickly, her words spilling fast, desperate. I was stupid. And I didn't stop it. Her voice collapsed into a sob. We slept together. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her like she was a stranger. My hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, my stomach twisting. Images burned into my mind, Brian's hands on her skin, his mouth where mine had been for years, their laughter spilling into the night while I sat alone in our quiet house. Laura reached across the table, her hand trembling, desperate to bridge the chasm between us. Michael, it was a mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I hated myself the second it happened. I jerked back before her hand could touch mine. Don't, I hissed. Don't you dare try to touch me. Tears streaked down her face, her sobs echoing off the kitchen walls. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could erase it. Please believe me, I didn't mean for any of this. I cut her off with a bitter laugh, cold and sharp. Erase it? Laura, you're carrying his child. That's not something you erase. That's not something you call a mistake. That's a choice you made, and now it's written in blood. She buried her face in her hands again, rocking in her chair, the sound of her guilt filling the room. But her tears didn't move me. Not anymore. They weren't washing away what she'd done, they were just proof she knew it could never be undone. And as I sat there, staring at the broken woman across from me, another realization hit me like a knife to the gut. This wasn't just my betrayal to Carrie. Megan had no idea. Her husband. Her best friend. Both of them had gutted her marriage the same way they gutted mine. And I was sitting on the truth that would crush her world. I clenched my fists so tight my nails bit into my palms. Laura's sobs filled the silence, but all I could hear was a single question screaming in my head. Do I tell Megan the truth, or do I let her keep living in the lie that just destroyed me? That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the sound of Laura's muffled crying echoing through the walls. Her confession replayed in my head, twisting like a knife. It's Brian's. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Megan's face. Her laugh at backyard cookouts, the way she hugged me like family, the trust in her eyes when she invited us into her home. And all I could think was, she doesn't know. She's still living in the illusion, while the truth is sitting in my kitchen like poison. Laura begged me to keep quiet. Her voice, hoarse from crying, whispered across the table earlier that night, "Please don't tell her, Michael. Not yet. I'll handle it. I can't lose everything." But her plea only made the burden heavier. Because she'd already lost me. And now she wanted me to carry the weight of her betrayal on my shoulders, as if silence could somehow save what was already ashes. I paced the hallway until dawn, my fists clenched, my thoughts boiling over. On one hand, telling Megan would detonate 2 marriages at once. Her life would collapse the way mine just had. On the other hand, staying silent would make me complicit in their lie. I'd have to smile at barbecues, nod at dinners, pretend I didn't know her husband had destroyed us both. I knew I couldn't live like that. Silence would kill me more slowly than the truth, but it would still kill me. The next evening, Laura sat across from me at the table, her eyes swollen, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, Michael. Don't call her. You'll ruin everything." I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, my voice came out steady, almost calm. "No, Laura. You already ruined everything. I'm just done living in your lie. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over Megan's name. Just seeing it made my chest tighten, but my hand didn't shake. Michael, please, Laura begged, panic rising in her voice. Think about what you're doing. Think about. But I didn't think. I pressed the screen. The dial tone rang, each buzz in my ear like a countdown to detonation. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath shallow. And then, her voice came through, warm, unsuspecting, casual. Hey, Michael. Everything okay? My throat felt like sandpaper, but the words tore out of me before I could stop them. Megan. I'm so sorry, but you need to know. Laura and Brian, they've been together. And Laura, she's pregnant. Silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against my chest, louder than any scream. Then came a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by a sob so raw it made my stomach twist. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. No, no, no. That's not true. But the way her sobs collapsed into ragged cries told me she knew it was. Across from me, Laura crumpled in her chair, both hands clamped over her mouth as Megan's pain poured through the phone like broken glass. And in that moment, I realized something brutal. Telling the truth didn't set anyone free. It only set fire to everything. Megan's sobs suddenly twisted into rage. Her voice rose sharp, trembling, echoing through the line. Brian. Brian, get in here. Tell me it's not true. Tell me. In the background, I heard chaos, footsteps, a door slamming, her voice shrill and furious. Laura's tears spilled faster, whispering, "Oh, God. Oh, God." Then came another scream, this one raw and guttural. You bastard. How could you? A crash followed, maybe a phone hitting the floor. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, staring at the black screen like it was a weapon I'd just fired. My heart pounded, my hands numb. Laura broke into sobs across from me. What have you done, Michael? What have you done? But I didn't answer. Because I already knew the truth, I had pulled the pin. And the explosion had just ripped through all of our lives. The silence after Megan's screams was deafening. I sat there gripping my phone, my chest heaving, while Laura collapsed across from me, sobbing uncontrollably. Her face was pale, her hands clutching at her hair as if she could pull the moment back into her skull and erase it. You ruined everything, she cried, her voice breaking. Why would you do that, Michael? Why would you betray me like this? I blinked at her, stunned by the audacity. Betray you? My voice cracked into something between laughter and rage. You slept with my friend, Laura. You're carrying his child. And somehow I'm the one who betrayed you? Yes, she snapped, her tears twisting into fury. You promised to protect this marriage, to protect me. And instead, you ran to Megan and destroyed both of us. Her words were ice water down my spine. She was shaking, furious, pointing at me like I was the villain. For weeks, I'd carried the weight of her secret alone, suffocating under it. The moment I let it out, suddenly I was the monster. I slammed my hands on the table so hard the candles rattled. Stop acting like I'm the problem. You betrayed me, Laura. You betrayed Megan. You tore everything apart the moment you chose Brian. She stood too, her face streaked with tears, eyes wild. We could have fixed it. If you just kept your mouth shut, we could have. Fixed it? I cut her off, my voice low but sharp enough to slice through her words. There is no fixing this. You don't fix betrayal with silence. You don't fix a broken vow by burying it. Her breath came fast and shallow, her shoulders trembling. She looked at me like I was a stranger, and maybe I was. Maybe the man she thought would always forgive her had died the second she whispered Brian's name. You've ruined everything, she spat, her voice shaking with venom. No, Laura, I said quietly, the calm in my voice surprising even me. You ruined everything. All I did was shine a light on it. The words hung between us, heavier than any scream. Her sobs faltered into silence, her chest rising and falling as she searched for something else to throw at me. But there was nothing left. Only the truth, ugly and undeniable. That night, the house felt like a tomb. Laura locked herself in the bedroom, and I sat in the living room surrounded by silence that pressed against my skull. The phone lay on the table in front of me, its black screen reflecting my hollow stare. I couldn't stay here anymore. Every wall whispered her lies. Every corner reeked of betrayal. I opened my laptop and typed 2 words that felt both like defeat and freedom: apartments for rent. Scrolling through listings of bare rooms and empty kitchens, I pictured a life stripped down to nothing. No wedding photos. No shared bed. No trace of her. Just me, starting over. For the first time since her confession, my chest loosened. Not peace. Not yet. But direction. A way out. Upstairs, I could hear Laura crying behind the locked door. But I didn't move to comfort her. Not this time. Because for the first time in our marriage, I knew exactly what I wanted. And it wasn't her. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a quiet office that smelled like leather chairs and old paper. Across the desk, a divorce attorney adjusted his glasses and slid a stack of forms toward me. His voice droned on about assets, timelines, custody, though there were no children to fight over, thank God. Most of it blurred into meaningless noise. Only one question landed like a hammer. Are you ready to file? I stared at the papers, my pen heavy in my hand. For years, my signature had meant new beginnings, car loans, mortgages, plans for a future with Laura. But this? This signature meant an ending. My hand shook for a moment, then steadied. I pressed the pen down and signed. The weight didn't vanish, but it shifted. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter, my breath less ragged. Walking out of that office, I knew there was no turning back. The marriage was over, and this time the decision was mine. When I got home, Laura was waiting in the living room. Her eyes were swollen, her cheeks streaked with tears. The moment I stepped through the door, she rushed toward me, clutching my arm like a drowning woman grabbing a life raft. "Michael, please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. But we can fix it. We can go to therapy, counseling, anything. Just don't end us like this." Her tears soaked through my sleeve. Her grip was trembling, desperate. For a long moment, I just looked at her. The woman I once loved more than anything now felt like a stranger begging for scraps of forgiveness. I pulled my arm free, my voice flat, empty. "There's nothing left to fix, Laura." Her face crumpled, a broken sound escaping her throat. But I didn't flinch. My heart had gone colder than her tears could ever thaw. She followed me through the house like a shadow, her words spilling, desperate. "Michael, listen to me. I still love you. I know I screwed up, but love doesn't just disappear, right? We can go to counseling. I'll cut Brian out completely. I'll do whatever it takes. Please, just don't throw us away." Her hands clutched mine, her eyes searching for some crack in the wall I'd built. But the truth was, there wasn't one. I didn't feel her love anymore. I only felt the betrayal. Every "I love you" sounded hollow. Every promise was too late. "You should have thought about that before the Bahamas," I said coldly. Her sobs shattered the room like glass breaking. She sank onto the couch, broken, but for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I only felt the urge to leave. Later that night, I packed the first box. Shirts, a few books, my guitar. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And with every item I pulled from our life together, I felt a piece of myself coming back. Love might start a marriage. But it sure as hell couldn't save one. A week later, my life was stacked into cardboard boxes. Clothes, a few books, my old guitar. Everything else I left behind. The house no longer felt like mine, it was a museum of betrayal. The drive down I-35 to Austin was quiet, just the hum of tires and the weight of everything I'd lost pressing against my chest. When I unlocked the door to a small one-bedroom apartment, the emptiness hit me hard. Bare walls, a mattress on the floor, a single window overlooking a parking lot. It wasn't much. But it was mine. That first night, I sat on the mattress surrounded by half-open boxes, the silence almost deafening. Freedom felt strange, lonely, sharp, but it was still freedom. The days crawled at first. Dinner wasn't lasagna bubbling in the oven or takeout shared across from Laura. It was cereal from the box, eaten standing in the kitchen because I hadn't bought a table yet. Laundry became its own challenge. I stared at the washer like it spoke a foreign language, fumbling with detergent, praying I wouldn't shrink every shirt I owned. Nights were the hardest. The walls creaked, the fridge hummed, and every sound reminded me I was alone. But slowly, I learned to sit with the silence instead of fighting it. Piece by piece, I was building a new rhythm. I signed up for a gym membership. The clang of weights and the burn in my muscles reminded me I was still alive, still capable of rebuilding. I started cooking again, really cooking this time, not boxed lasagna but fresh pasta, grilled chicken, garlic sizzling in olive oil. For the first time in years, I cooked for myself, not for anyone else. And it felt good. Sometimes I walked the streets of Austin at night, letting the city's music and chatter wash over me. Each step was a reminder that life was moving forward, even if mine had been shattered. Months passed. I heard through a mutual friend that Laura had given birth. Against my better judgment, I found myself outside the hospital, standing in the hallway like a ghost. Through the glass, I saw her cradling the baby, tiny, fragile, and unmistakably Brian's. Dark hair, sharp features, even the same dimpled chin. Our eyes met for a split second. She didn't smile. She just held the child tighter. I walked away. And with each step, the last sliver of denial dissolved. This wasn't my child. It never had been. Time didn't erase the pain, but it gave me room to breathe. I tried dating again, awkward coffee shop conversations, nervous smiles. Nothing serious, but enough to prove my heart could still beat for something beyond heartbreak. 6 months later, I sat in my little Austin apartment, sunlight streaming through the blinds. The place was still small, still quiet, but it felt different now. It felt like mine. Looking back, I finally understood, losing her wasn't the tragedy I once thought it was. It was the best decision I ever made. I lost a marriage. But I kept my dignity. And in the end, that was worth more than anything. I sipped my coffee, watching the city wake up outside my window. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt free.